You walk into a room, and the reason you came evaporates. You stare at a familiar face, and their name sits just out of reach. You open your phone for one small thing, and minutes disappear. These moments can feel like failures. But most of the time, they are simply how memory works. Selective, context-dependent, and quietly practical. Tonight on Curious Nights, memory for everyday life. Why we forget, and how recall works. Our setting is a late-night apartment. A lamp in the corner. A calm desk. A quiet mind that does not need to prove anything. We can start with a gentle truth. Forgetting is not always a malfunction. Often, it is a feature. Your brain is exposed to more details than it can store. Textures, signs, faces, conversations, passwords, dates, errands. If everything stayed vivid forever, attention would drown. So memory is selective. It keeps what seems useful, and lets the rest fade. In everyday life, we usually want memory to do two jobs. 1. Store experiences. 2. Make us effective. And those goals can conflict. A brain that stores everything is not always a brain that moves smoothly through the day. So sometimes the mind keeps the gist, not the transcript. The meaning, not every detail. That is why you remember the feeling of a conversation, but not the exact words. Or you remember that an appointment exists, but not where you put the reminder. Forgetting also happens for simple, quiet reasons. Sometimes the memory never fully formed. Because attention was split. Sometimes it formed, but became hard to access. Because the right cue is missing. So when you forget, a helpful question is not, "What is wrong with me?" It is, "Which part was missing?" Encoding, storage, or retrieval. Tonight we will move slowly through those three. How memories are made, how they settle, and how they return when you need them. Encoding is the first gate. It is the process of turning experience into a memory the brain can keep. Encoding depends heavily on attention. If your mind is elsewhere, the moment may pass through without leaving a stable trace. This is why people misplace keys while thinking about something else. The hands did the action. The mind did not mark the moment. Working memory is part of this. It is the small mental workspace where you hold information briefly. A phone number long enough to dial it. A short list long enough to walk to the kitchen. When working memory is crowded, new items slip. Emotion also influences encoding. Strong emotion can stamp a moment deeply. But it can also narrow attention. You may remember the central feeling vividly, while the surrounding details blur. And novelty matters. The mind tends to encode what is new or different. Routine days can feel like they disappear, not because nothing happened, but because little stood out. In a way, routine is designed to be forgettable, so you can live it efficiently. A quiet practical tip follows from this. If you want to remember something, give it a small moment of attention. Name it. Picture it. Connect it to what you already know. Memory likes hooks. Next, we will talk about what happens after encoding, how memories settle, and why sleep and time matter more than force. After a memory is encoded, it is not finished. It has to consolidate, to become more stable over time. Consolidation is one reason sleep feels so important. Sleep is not only rest for muscles. It is also a quieter kind of processing for the brain. Sorting, strengthening, and pruning. Stress can complicate this. When stress is high, sleep is often lighter, and attention is often fragmented. So the memory process can feel noisier. Not because you are failing, but because the system is busy. Another quiet force is interference. New information can interfere with old information. Old information can interfere with new. This is why similar passwords get mixed up, or why learning one route can make another route harder to recall. Memory is not stored like items in labeled drawers. It is stored more like patterns across a network. And patterns can overlap. Overlap is efficient, but it can cause mix-ups. So an everyday lesson is gentle. If something matters, revisit it briefly over time. Not as cramming, as spacing. Small returns tell the brain, keep this. Next, we move to the part that feels most personal. Retrieval. How a memory comes back, and why it sometimes refuses, even when it is still there. Recall is not a simple download. It is reconstruction. The brain uses cues to rebuild the moment. This is why context matters. You remember different things in different places. A smell can bring back a year. A song can bring back a room. A particular street can bring back an old version of you. It also explains the small mystery of walking into a room and forgetting. The doorway changes context. Your brain updates the scene. And sometimes the cue you were using disappears. If you step back, the cue can return. Not always, but often enough to notice. There is also the tip of the tongue feeling. You know it. But the word does not arrive. This is often a retrieval problem, not a storage problem. The pathway is close, just not open. For names, the problem is common because names are arbitrary labels. They do not describe the person, so they have fewer natural hooks. A gentle strategy is to connect the name to something. A sound-alike word. A visual image. or a meaningful detail you actually noticed. And there is prospective memory. Remembering to remember. To send the email. To bring the document. To stop at the store. Prospective memory loves external cues. A note in the right place. An alarm at the right time. A routine that carries the task. The calm takeaway is this. When recall fails, it does not always mean the memory is gone. Sometimes it means the cue is wrong. Or the mind is tired. Or attention is already full. Now we can gather the story into a few quiet points. Just enough to keep. Not enough to effort. First, forgetting is often normal. Memory is selective because attention is limited. Second, many everyday forgettings are encoding issues. If attention is split, the moment may not be marked clearly. Third, memories strengthen over time through consolidation. Sleep, spacing, and lower stress can make remembering easier. Fourth, recall depends on cues. Context, emotion, and meaning help open the right pathway. And fifth, for everyday life, supports are not cheating. Notes, calendars, and routines are part of a healthy memory system. They let your mind rest. And now we return to the late-night apartment. The lamp is steady. The room is quiet. No one is asking you to perform. Memory can relax now. The mind does not need to hold every detail. It only needs to hold what matters enough to return. And even that can be shared with paper, with reminders, with routines. If a thought appears, let it be a small ripple. It rises. It passes. It leaves the surface smooth again. This has been Curious Nights. Memory for everyday life. Why we forget, and how recall works. And now, you can let the night remember the rest for you.